Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Computer. My name is Matt, and today we're going to vibe code an app together for the next hour or so. I'm going to try to basically make this an unedited video where we walk through my process for doing development using AI tools, so you can get an idea for what it's actually like to build these things. And I wanted to make this because I feel like there's a misconception out there that anyone with zero knowledge of how development works, how code works, can just spit out an app in no time, and it's great, it's high quality, it just works. And that's really not the impression that I have. I think that vibe coding for like proper products looks a lot more like traditional development than I think a lot of people expect. And so the jumping off point for this was Stephen Robles, who also is a YouTuber. He's been diving into vibe coding lately, and he was unable to make a podcast app. And so that's what we're going to try to make today. In 1 hour, I'm going to try to get as far into a podcast app as I can. And hopefully this will be beneficial in teaching you some of the basic things that I've found successful in writing apps for iOS. And for the web, we're going to make an iOS app today. I will say before we get going, I think Stephen had two things going against him. He says right up front, for context, I have zero knowledge of Swift, no coding experience whatsoever, and I don't even know how to use Xcode. This is that first misconception I talked about. You need to know what you're doing. I don't think that AI means you have, like, all knowledge is useless. Like, how these things work is important. And so he set himself up behind the eight ball there. The second thing, and I'll leave a link to this post here, he was asking Swift to build, he was asking the ChatGPT and Claude web apps, or I guess he's installed them on the desktop, but they're just the chatbots, to generate Swift files for him, and he would paste them into his project, which I'm amazed he got as far as he did, because that is the hardest way to do this. These chatbots are not built to kind of build projects like this. He then moved on, he got that feedback, and then he moved on to doing it in Xcode, in the Xcode beta. It has kind of a assistant in here to do coding for you, and you can import your own Claude key. He spent like $200 a month. $100 a month. He spent $100 on this and was using like Claude Opus. This is better, but in my impression of using this as well, Xcode's kind of code assistant is the worst code assistant I've used. Windsurf is better. Cursor is better. Claude Code is better. The Xcode is not good for doing the whole app. So anyway, I'll leave a link to the article in here, but let's go ahead and generate a new project. So we are going to use, let's clear this. So we're going to use Claude Code for this project, and to start, we're going to go to Xcode. We're in the Xcode beta, and we're going to create a new project here. So we're going to make a multi-platform app. For simplicity's sake, let's just make it an iOS app. Multi-platform should be fine, but let's just reduce the complexities. So we're going to call this podcast. Very simple. It'll have my own identifier. Cool. Interface will be Swift UI. The language is Swift. We'll do no testing system for now, and storage will be Swift data. I could host in CloudKit if I want to sync data between devices. I'm not going to do that now. Again, just for simplicity's sake, to kind of give us an example of what's going on here. So we're going to create this on the desktop so we can easily access it. And Xcode is going to generate us kind of this basic structure. There's a content view, which is the default view that loads when the app opens. There's an item file here that's basically just this very basic item. And then podcast app is over here. This is just kind of the data that we're going to have. And we should see it's preparing the simulator, but we're going to see over here that it's going to generate an app that basically has nothing and then a plus button at the top. So first thing I would recommend you do is create, and there it is create a GitHub account and use Git to store your changes, store your code. So what we're going to do, we're using the interface here. You can do this through the command line, but we're going to use the interface here. We're going to add an existing repository because we have a repository already here. You have to find it on your computer. So this is in the desktop. It's called podcast, open. So that's it. Add that, there we are, and let's publish the repository, and we'll call this podcast demo. It'll be podcast demo there, and we're going to keep it private. So cool, publish it. There we go. I'm not going to show you how to create a GitHub account. I'm not going to show you how to install Xcode. I'm not going to show you how to install Claude Code, which is what we're going to be using. You can figure those out, but I'm just going to show you the workflow. Again, we're already a few minutes in. So So I have my Git repo here. You'll see later why that's useful. Next up, we want to open this folder in Cursor. So I like to have the project open in Cursor. Cursor does a really nice job. You can see this is kind of the same stuff that we had in Xcode. You can see how it lines up here. So this is it's just a file view, right? You can figure it out. We're actually going to get rid of the AI pane there because we're not going to use Cursor to actually do this. You could use Cursor, but I actually don't pay for Cursor. I just like this because it'll show us diffs very nicely in a second. So, okay, so we have the project created in Xcode. We have the folder opened in Cursor. This is optional, but again, I like it. And we've added it to GitHub. We've created a GitHub repository for this project so we can lock in changes and save states and everything, so it'll be very useful. Next up, we are going to use Claude Code. So here's what you do. You want to cd into desktop, and then we're going to do podcast. There we go. So now in the command line, we've gone to our desktop, the podcast folder. We are in the podcast directory. And from here, I just type Claude, which I've already installed. Again, links to everything will be in the description, and you can kind of install it for yourself. It's very simple. First thing you need to do is give it access to this directory. I'll say yes. Okay. And then we are going to, it's probably smart to start with init. Basically, when you run Claude Code in a directory, if you run the /init command, it's going to generate a claude.md file, a Claude Markdown file. That's going to kind of document how this project works, which is helpful going forward for the AI tool to be able to reference that file and be able to kind of get some context for how things work without having to read every single line of code in the project and figuring it out. So I find this to be pretty helpful. The first thing you're going to see is that it wants to make this change. Do you want to create Claude MD? You can say yes, no, or yes. Allow all edits during this session. And we're going to enable that just to make things easier. So it's creating the file. Everything's looking good, and now it's done. Okay, so it's created the Claude MD file. We can see it here, and so it's basically just told me here's the basic stuff. So we will have this file here to change it later. If I go to GitHub, you can see we do have a change, and I'll just commit this added Claude MD file, Command Enter to commit, and Command P to push to origin. Push just pushes it to the server. So when I commit the change, and I can see that in my history, right? I added the Claude MD file, which changed one file. It added this file with this content. And then when I pushed it up to github.com. So if my computer falls in the river right now, I can still have it. So, okay, nothing too interesting yet. We haven't actually changed the functionality. We've just added a file that documents how this project works. So next up, this is where we're going to have a little bit more fun. So now we need to get going. We need to actually get the code going, and this is where I see a lot of people fall off. So what you'll do, and I'm using Aqua Voice just for this text-to-speech, which is very helpful. Make me a podcast app that looks really nice and is modern. That is where I feel like these vibe coding tools imply you can start, but this is not at all the case. So what I find really helpful is to have an idea for what you want to build and then build it out slowly. And this is where kind of knowing development helps, because you kind of know where to start and what you can work on. So I'm going to describe the views that I want in this app. I'm going to make them basically placeholders for now, and then we'll go ahead and add the logic and the content to them so they can actually function later. But getting the views there first is going to help. And so, yeah, so I'm just going to kind of dictate, and we'll see how this goes. This could be a little messy. This is an iOS app built on Swift and using Swift UI for all the UI. The app only runs on the iPhone and iPad. It will never run on the Mac, so we don't need to worry about that. The podcast will be pretty simple, or the podcast app will be pretty simple, and it will let users subscribe to shows, see all the episodes of those shows, and by default, the app will load to a list of recent episodes that are unplayed and unarchived from the shows they're subscribed to. So that was not super graceful, but pretty simple. It'll let you subscribe to shows, see all the shows episodes in those shows, and by default, the app will open to a list of recent episodes. So basically what this means is we need to have data for what shows the user is subscribed to, what episodes of those shows are available, and we should have a status for all of these items, whether the user is subscribed to a podcast or not, and whether they have listened to an episode or not. We should also probably track whether they have archived an episode or not. I think for the Now Playing screen, we'll want to show episodes that are partially played but not archived, and we should only take them off the Now Playing screen if they're actually archived. Or the recent, not the Now Playing screen, the recent episodes screen if they're actually archived. Okay. For now, let's not worry about all of that. Let's start by just generating the views for these screens. I'm thinking we need the recent episodes screen as kind of the default view for the app. We need a settings screen, and we need a screen for adding new podcasts. So letting the user enter in a podcast URL. So that's a lot, and I could probably do it better, but we're doing it live, and so that's just what came to mind. So I kind of gave it some context for what this project is going to look like. Here's what we want to do. Here's the tech we're using, right? It should be built on Swift. It should be using Swift UI for all the UI stuff. And then I kind of give an idea for what it's going to do, how it's going to work, and you can kind of see it's already generating these files. Hopefully it doesn't try to do too much up front. I don't particularly need these views to look beautiful. I don't need them to be functional yet. I just need them to exist so I can start working on them from here, right? And so we can already see these files starting to get generated. You can see it created the recent episodes file, the settings view file. Now we're creating the Add Podcast screen, so I'm guessing there'll be one called Add Podcast. So that's that. If we go to recent episodes, so you can kind of see we've got just a pretty minimal file here. We'll see exactly what this does. It looks like they have a sample episode here that we'll probably want to make sure we get rid of. Here's the settings view, quality options, low, medium, high. Playback speed, okay, auto download episodes. So it's added some settings that it thinks I'm going to want. It's added privacy policy and support URLs, which will need to be there if you're shipping to the App Store. So that makes some sense, but they're definitely placeholders. Now it's added the Add Podcast view, and I think that's it. So it looks like it's done. So perfect. I've created all the basic views for the app, recent episodes, settings, Add Podcast, and updated content view. Now uses a tab view with these 3 tabs for easy navigation. Okay, so let's see what this did. And you can already see it's actually previewed here. So we can go and see these. It added quite a few settings. It thinks there's, I don't know if that's actually real, download quality. Okay, so this is, I was pretty vague, like I said, I was pretty vague with my instructions, but yeah, it's definitely gone off and done its own thing. So too many settings here. I'm going to say we should remove all the, well, let's remove these 2, download quality, and storage is fine. I bet that doesn't even function yet, but that's not a bad setting to have there. So let me move this over here so I can see it while I dictate. This looks good, but let's make some tweaks. The settings screen should not have skip intro or skip outro options. Those will not be available. We should also remove the download quality setting. We don't need that. And we'll just stick with that. And so now it's going to go ahead and remove those settings for us. So ideally, we should have the playback. We'll just have the playback speed slider. I don't know if that's really the right place to have it either, but we'll keep it there for now. Downloads, auto download new episodes makes sense. And then, yeah, storage will still be there. And that should be all good. So it's re-rendering, playback speed, auto download, everything else is gone. Cool. So this is perfect. Now let's take a look at the ad page. Let's not do popular podcasts. Okay, perfect. Now on the add podcast view, I want you to remove the popular podcast section. We don't need that. The user will just provide us the RSS feeds for the shows they want to listen to. So you can already see kind of I'm going through and removing the things we don't need. Would it be nice to have popular shows and recommendations here? Absolutely. And we should add that at some point, but we need to get to the basic functionality here first, get it working, and then we can add on to it. You don't want to do too much at the start. So this is much better. Add a podcast. This UI is not great, but it's functional. Is it actually putting... No, that's just placeholder text. Why is the placeholder text blue? Blue placeholder text is strange. Okay, so it made the changes. This is looking much better, but the placeholder text in the add podcast feed text field is blue. I've never seen that before, and it seems weird. Can you make the placeholder text gray? Okay, so that'll go off and do that, and we should see this turn gray in a sec. So that page will be in a decent spot, assuming that works nicely. Okay, so it's refreshed. It's still blue. I don't think it's actually changed it. Foreground, secondary. Okay, so it's changed the color there. It's still blue. Why is it blue? Very strange. We'll come back to that because that's not the most important thing right now. Okay, and finally, recent episodes. Okay, and now for the recent episodes view, I want you to remove all the placeholder data. The user should just see their actual recent episodes and not any placeholder information. If they don't have any recent episodes, we should have a button that takes them to the add view so they can go ahead and add their first podcast. Okay, so that should change this. I don't want the placeholder stuff there. I don't need that. I just want to add an actual show. So that should just take a couple seconds to update, and I would expect this to go away and for there to be kind of like a button or a link that they can tap that brings them over to the add view. And now that I'm thinking about it, actually, I don't actually want an add podcast view. I really want, there we go. So add your first podcast. We'll take, well, this isn't functional. So let me run this. So you can go ahead and go to product, run. And actually, no, I'm going to stop that. I don't want to run it on my iPhone. Let me run it on an iPhone 16 Pro. So this will run in the simulator on my device. So the build is complete. The simulator is over here. It's booting up. And in a second, we should have an interactive version of the app going here. So give that a second to actually do its thing. It'll launch. But yeah, so recent episodes is looking fine. I don't know if I want the reload button there. I feel like pull to refresh would be fine. But yeah, as I was saying, I don't think I want this to be an add podcast yet. I think I want this to be like my shows page. And then there should be a plus button here. So I'm going to change that. So this is booting up. It takes a second the first time. And there we go. So we can kind of click between these. And if I say add first podcast, it doesn't actually take me there. Okay, so it doesn't take me to the ad page, so that doesn't function. We'll come back to that. Well, actually, let's fix it now. I see the button on the recent episodes page, but it doesn't actually take me to the add podcast view. Okay, so let's see if it fixes that. Hopefully it does. So you're right, the button isn't connected to actually navigate. So what's it doing here? So it's, okay, so now we're storing the state of what selected tab is, right? So recent episodes view selected tab is, okay, so it's adding a state so the app kind of knows what page I'm on or what view I'm on. So let's see what happens now. So if I command R to run it again, build succeeded, and it should show in the simulator. There we go. Add your first podcast. It navigates over. Perfect. So first issue fixed. Again, I don't know why it's stuck with blue for the placeholder text. That's very strange. But okay, let's redo this add podcast view. Okay, so I've changed my mind. I think the add podcast view should actually be a shows view, which shows the subscribed podcasts that I have already subscribed to, and there should be a plus button on this page that lets me add a new podcast to my list of shows. Okay, so that I think is probably more in line with what we want, right? We probably want to just look at my shows and we could tap into each one and see details, but we're not there yet. So right now it's just going to show me my list of shows and give me a plus button to add a new one. So I think that'll make sense. And at this point, I'm actually going to close Canvas because I think Canvas is going to stop working now. We can see an error here, cannot find add podcast view in scope. That's because it's in the middle of working. Hopefully it'll resolve that issue. Hopefully eventually we'll run into some sort of Xcode compile error, and I can show you kind of how to fix things. It's pretty simple, but yeah, we'll kind of get to that if we need to. But you can kind of see this is kind of the encouraging part of working with these things. Is we've only been going for a few minutes, and I already have this view, a couple settings, right? Like we're already making progress. We already have like the core of this app good to go, which is, it's exciting, right? Especially when you first do it, it's really exciting to do. So yeah, I think it can be pretty rad, and it feels very empowering up front. But as with most things, it's done. So as with most things, it's easy to get like 80% of the way there, and the last 20% is like so hard. So, okay, recent episodes, add your first podcast. Then this is updated shows, and then I don't have any, so add your first podcast, and it brings up this view. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll do init again. So this should be building up the ClaudeMD file again, should be updating it. With the new content. And I should actually, at this point, I'm kind of going fast because it's a video. I should be committing these changes. And so if I go over to the GitHub app, you can see here's all the changes we've made to the code. We've added these 3 new files. We've updated content view in these ways. We're about to update Claude code, or the ClaudeMD file, I should say. Cool. And so now it's kind of updated the ClaudeMD with our new kind of structure of the app. So we'll just do, this is going to be such a bad commit. Lots of change, actually like got initial views created, right? That's kind of what we've done so far. We've created the initial views. So, okay. So we have a list of recent episodes. We have our shows, but we don't have any episodes or shows. So add your first podcast. What's my podcast URL? Well, let's go over to the browser and I'll add my own show. So subscribe via RSS, copy link address, and if I go back to here, I'm actually curious what happens if I paste this in, add podcast. Yeah, okay, it does something, but nothing actually happens. If I go into the console here, which is running, it looks like there's errors, but yeah, nothing actually, not errors, there's warnings, but nothing actually happened. So that's fine. We kind of told it not to do that. So let's go back to Claude Code, and now we need to actually add logic. Okay, now I'm ready to add logic for adding new shows. When the user enters a podcast feed, we should download that file, which will have all of the podcast information. And we should pull things like the album artwork, the podcast title, and whatever other information you think would be useful for a user. Present the overview of that show to the user so they can make sure it's the right thing they intended to find. And then they can either cancel or subscribe to the show to add it to their list of shows and episodes. Okay, so to be clear, the final version of this app, when you go to add a show, we would have like, I'd like to integrate into the Apple Podcasts directory so that you could just type in a show title, we could search against that API, and you could get the shows that way. That would be a better user experience. For the sake of speed in this initial kind of video, I'm going to just let them provide the feed for themselves, just, again, to make it a little quicker. But this will take a little bit because it's actually going to make some bigger changes. It's going to probably generate a new view. So what I would expect this to do, yeah, so podcast feed parser is a new file. This is about the time where if I was thinking faster about this, I would have it start to organize my files, right? I'd have one folder in the project for views. I'd have one for kind of models that like do things. So the feed parser would be in the models, the like kind of recent episodes view, settings view, shows view, those would all be in the views section. So we could do that in a second as well, to kind of get an idea for what we're doing. So now let's see what it's doing. Let's scroll back. It looks like it created a new file. So, okay, so here's my request. So it's done some thinking. It wants me to add some logic. Enters it. So download the RSS feed URL and parse it, extract information, show preview, allow them to cancel or subscribe. Cool. This is a multi-step task that would benefit from a to-do list. So it's making a to-do list for itself. So it's creating the feed parser, data model, preview confirmation, add podcast view to handle the flow, handle the subscription logic. Okay, I should use the to-do right tool to track this complex task. Okay, so this is using tools in Claude Code. This is kind of the thing. It's not just the model doing the work, it's the model having access to tools, and those tools can really power it up. So this is a complex feature that involves things. So I did ask it to do, I guess, quite a bit all at once, but it's creating the code. It's creating the parser there. It's updating the item. So it's pulling in once it has the feed. The convenient thing is that podcast feeds are a pretty well-known entity. So you don't need to kind of like provide its sample code of like, here's what an RSS feed looks like for a podcast. It has an idea what that is. And so here's all the values of it. It's saving them to the product item, podcast app Swift. So now it's pulling those. The shows view, show preview. So again, it's going to have a lot of these states, like is it showing a preview of an episode of a show? Yes or no. It's false by default, but it could be set to true, which would show a view. Let's see. So it's made a lot of changes there. Let me update the shows view to use the actual podcast model from Swift Data. So this was, again, when the app launched or when we just initiated the project, there was this item. That was just this generic item. Now you can see it's called podcast and has all these details associated with it that the other views will use. Need to update the part where the podcasts are displayed. So it's making a ton of changes here. So this is pretty hard. It's done it all. Let's see if it will run. Command R to run it. It's building. Build failed. Okay, so it found one issue. If I click on this issue, the podcast feed parser does not conform to protocol observable object. So this is easy. We're going to copy this and paste this into Claude Code. What this is basically doing is it's showing the error here. It's showing the file where there's the issue, and it's showing the line and character number where that error happened. I get this error. It started with a slash, and so Claude thinks it's a slash command, like slash init or slash model or something. So, okay, so it was an observable object. Now it's not. Let's see if it will run now. Command R. Now it runs. Okay, cool. So it's running. We can go to shows, add your first podcast, and is that still, no, it's not on my clipboard anymore. So let me go back here, subscribe via RSS, copy the link, paste, preview, comfort zone. So it's not pulling in the artwork. That's weird. This is not super nicely formatted, but it's not bad. But okay, Christopher Lawley, Matt Birchler, Neil Young, those are the hosts, yep. Why it's not pulling in the artwork is interesting. We'll figure that out. Recent episodes, the most recent was September 4th. It's just really nice paper. That's accurate. It's showing the times, the descriptions, the dates. Seems good. I am concerned about the podcast art not being there, but we can fix that. Before I subscribe, let me fix that. So you kind of just, again, text this. If you have a speech-to-text kind of app on your computer, even if it's just Mac OS's, I find this really helpful. So this is looking good so far, but I'm noticing that the artwork is not showing in the preview view for the episode. It's just showing a placeholder. Can you figure out why that's happening? Can you also add logging so that I can track what information is being pulled from the feed so that I can see any gaps in the data? This is another thing I recommend is adding logging. You kind of saw me look at that earlier. Basically, when you're running the app, you're going to get these logs that are generated, and it's going to kind of show you what's up. So these are going to be warnings and errors by default, but you can also just log anything you want to the console. And so in this case, I've asked it to, when you're pulling the subscription data, log that data to the console, and that'll help me see what's going on. So I'll be able to see when I run this again, is it pulling the show artwork URL but not loading it, or is it not finding the URL? What's going on? And so that'll help me troubleshoot what's going on there. What I want to do is I want to make sure that that's there from the start, because I'm worried that if it's not, I'm not going to be able to pull it again later. So I want to just have the artwork there. So we'll give it a second, and it's handling different image formats, so that could be an issue. I think we're just using a JPEG for ours, so I don't see why that would be an issue, but it's adding the logging now, so you can kind of see that's the print command. It likes to add emoji to the console logs, which is sometimes helpful. When there's lots of logs, it can be a little overwhelming, but it does give you kind of a visual that can be helpful. So just looking at the time, we're just over half an hour through. So we're at a decent spot, but I definitely want to get to subscribing and listening to episodes before we leave this, before we get out of here. So, okay. So add your first podcast. It's still in there. Preview. There we go. It pulled it in. That's good. And then you can see over here in the logs, here's all the XML parsing that's happening. Tons and tons. That's actually so many freaking logs. Okay, I will leave those here for now, just because if something goes wrong in the future as we're working, I'd like to fix it. But yeah. Okay, let's see what happens when I hit subscribe. Hey, look at that. Okay. Here's my recent episodes. Here's the shows I'm subscribed to. Okay. That's great. Let's go ahead and add a second show. Let's copy the RSS feed for Connected. Let's hit plus. Let's go ahead and preview this podcast. It's fetching the data. It's pulling it in. There's somehow no album art for this one. That's actually interesting. Is it actually just a random thing? Like, strange. Okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to power through. So, okay. Why is this podcast at macstories.net? It might be pulling in the wrong info here. What happens if I click on one of these? Nothing. Okay. And when I click on one of these, nothing happens. Cool. Also, interestingly, we see the connected episodes have a duration of 4754, 4902, whereas the Comfort Zone ones are accurate timestamps. Let's ask Claude Code. Actually, let's go back to Xcode. Here's all of that. And actually, what's one of the numbers? 4754. 4754. Episode duration, 4754. That is the duration. Why is that the duration? That is so strange. Can we actually... 4754. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. As you can see, here we are in the complexities. So 568. So here's episode 568. Where's the duration? Duration, okay, the duration is there. Why is it strange? That is very strange. Okay, why is that the way it is? Let's go back to Comfort Zone. Let's copy this RSS feed and look at this feed. iTunes Duration. Yeah, see, that's printed out as plain text. That's interesting. Okay. I don't actually know what's going on there. Interesting. Okay, so it is displaying the right... it's just displaying the raw text of what's in the RSS feed. So that's something. We'll fix that. Again, we're already creating a to-do list of things we need to fix. But again, I wanted us to be able to play episodes. So first thing let's do, let's add the podcast art. So let's go back to Claude Code. Okay, on the podcast view or the My Shows view, I want to display the artwork for the subscribed podcast. If we don't have the artwork stored already as a URL, I'd like you to load it. Actually, screw it. No. Let's go ahead and add the art for the podcast to the My Shows view. So on the left of every podcast row, we should have the podcast art itself in a rectangle with rounded corners, and we should store that artwork locally in the app so we don't have to fetch it from the server every time. Okay. And if we don't have artwork, we should load the feed and pull the artwork now so that we have it in the app data. This is a thing you can do in Claude Code. You can actually, as it's working on the previous thing, you can actually send it additional messages and have it kind of adjust in real time as it goes. So now what I'm hoping, just to be clear, is on this shows page, I'd like the podcast art to be kind of on the left and then the podcast itself to be on the right. I could probably get rid of some of this extra data. I just need the podcast title, and the artwork would be enough, frankly. But here we go. It's generated a new file, right? So image cache manager.swift. So it's working on that. That's another model. So again, I actually need to, we'll do that next. We'll kind of start to sort these files because this is actually giving me a little anxiety, having them all kind of just at the root of the project. So adding artwork download on subscribe. So cool. So it understands, and this is where it's very, very cool and very, very helpful, is it understands when I gave it those instructions, I didn't explicitly say that means that when you subscribe to a show, we should download it right then and there, but it's figured it out. And so it's going to add that functionality. And that's kind of one of the things you have to monitor while these things are working, is it will interpret your instructions and do more potentially, which can be good, but it also can have it go off the rails and not do what you actually want. So let's paste in this. I get this error. So what was this error? Image cache does not conform. Okay, so it's going to have to just remove the observable object, most likely again. Yeah. Is that a new error or is that just showing? Yeah. So now we have a new error. So we'll go ahead and copy that. Nope. Another one. So, okay. So requires, so it needs to conform to observable object. So because I made that other change, it's didn't like this change. So, okay. It's working instead of, okay. And build succeeded. Now we are getting warnings, so you don't want those to get totally out of control, but we have a chance here. So connected. Ooh, you can see it's really trying to pull the data. I might be in a loop here. Let's actually stop this because it's just stuck in a loop. Another reason to be paying attention to the logs, because if you're just looking at the app, you wouldn't have noticed that was even a thing. So, okay. Let's go back to the connected feed. And where in this feed is the artwork? I'm guessing it's this. So let's copy this URL, paste it. That is the artwork. Okay, so I'm noticing, so iTunes image, and what's it in the comfort zone one? Where do we have our image in this one. Here it is. iTunes image, href equals that. It's a PNG, but okay. Why is that? Huh. And I mean, this is the podcast art, right? Yeah, so why is it pulling from one but not the other? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to copy this entire feed, and we're going to go back to the terminal. And so I'm noticing in this one feed that the podcast art is not being found, even though it's clearly there in the attribute. Here's the full feed data that's having the issue. Okay, and then I'm going to paste in the full RSS feed. So 14,000 lines. Let's actually just pull in that. Here's the start of the feed data. Okay, so we've pasted in the part of the feed data that is not working. I can see the issue. The podcast has iTunes image with an href, which should be parsed correctly. Looking, wait, what did it say? The issue might be with the namespace handling of the order of parsing. Let me enhance the XML parser to better handle iTunes namespace elements with more specific logging. Okay, we'll see if this works. Okay. And this is, again, this is actually a good example because this is showing you the complexity of podcasts. It's a lot easier when everything in the app is locked down to your environment, but as soon as you start introducing random data from the rest of the world, it gets more complicated. And it's still not working. Okay, so what error am I getting? So download failed. The resource cannot be loaded because it requires a secure connection. Okay. So the data's so the data is not pulled because of an access issue. So let's see. Okay. It looks like there's a data access issue that we're trying to download the file, but we're not being allowed to by the server. Here's what I see in the logs. Is there a good way to fix this? Okay, and then I'll paste in this error or this log that we're seeing. So requires use of a secure connection. Okay, so I guess we're doing a HTTP request, and we need to do an HTTPS. Interesting. Okay, so Libsyn's system, which is what Comfort Zone runs on, is fine with this, but Relay's internal system is not fine with it. So, okay, so build succeeded. Here we go. Now if we go to the shows page, it's going to try to download, and it works. Okay, great. So there we are. So it did its thing. So now we have the show art for both of these. If I actually go back here and run it again, so let's start over. I should see when I go to shows, yeah, there's the data. It's loading the cache from the directory, so it's not actually accessing this each time. So that's good. Okay, that was really annoying me. So, perfect. Let's add the show art to the recent EPS page, episodes page as well. Oh, also can we sort the files into view, model, etc. folders too? Okay, so it's still working on the last task, but I've asked it to move the files around. Again, I should be committing way more. here. Definitely an issue of speed as we kind of work through this. But yeah, basically what I like to do is I like to, after I make a change and get the app into a working state, I like to commit that version of the app so that if I do something later that screws everything up, that breaks everything, I can just undo those commits and get back to a good state. So let's see what's going on here. You can actually see I'm not using cursor much here at all. Yeah. But anyway, views, services, models, good. That's all looking fine. And yeah, okay, cool. So things are organized now. Good. We can see the podcast art here. Great. And it's kind of reflowed this info as well. So now what we need to do is actually do something when you click these episodes. We only have about 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I get this audio playing. Okay. So I will commit this. Got podcasts loaded and saved to the app with artwork. Okay. Now let's go ahead and make it so when you click one of these podcasts, it will actually play. So let's go back to our terminal and let's tell Claude Code what to do. Next, I would like to make it so the podcast episodes actually play when the user taps on them from the recent episodes list. This should load up a now playing view that is new and shows the artwork for the podcast, playback controls, and a volume slider, as well as a progress slider through the episode. The user should be able to swipe down on this view to minimize it to the bottom part of the screen, which will hover over everything else. Tapping the minimized view will expand to the full now playing view. Okay, so this is a pretty complex instruction as well, but again, we're speedrunning this, trying to get it done as quick as possible. So I think it's pretty clear what I'm looking for here. When I tap this episode, I want the audio to start playing. I want to have the now playing view kind of rise up from the bottom of the screen. It should show the artwork. It should show, I gave it some freedom here to choose like other information that it might want to display, the podcast title, the episode title, something like that. And then playback controls, a volume slider, a progress bar. And then they should be able to swipe down to minimize it. And then once it's minimized, that'll probably be a separate view. They should be able to tap that minimized view to bring it back up to full screen. So now we have the audio manager, which goes in services. So now it's handling like, oh, we're going to be an audio player now. We're going to have to handle that. That's a whole new thing. That's a whole new kind of like API we need to load from the iOS SDK. And yeah, so it started that. So now it should be able to play audio. One of the things we might have to be aware of is that we need the app to know that this is a podcast player and not just a general audio thing, right? Like if you're scrolling social media and you're looking at a video and that's playing audio and you like close the app, like you swipe the app away, the audio, you would expect it to stop. And that's, I think, the default behavior for audio. But for a podcast app or a music app, you would not expect it to stop. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for that. I don't know if we'll have time in this hour-long limit that I've put on myself, but that's ideally what we would do here. So it's created the now playing view, created the mini player view, adding player state management. So that's good. So it needs to remember where we are. There's a bunch of other little things we could add. This recent episodes view should show how much time is left, not just how much time is in the episode. We should probably show download status. It's probably, it's interesting. What's going to happen when I tap one of these? Is it actually going to download it and play it right away? Is it going to stream it? It's probably going to download it, but we'll have to see. So, yeah, we'll see what happens here. It could be interesting. But this is a big instruction, so it's making a lot of changes here. It's a good thing I committed before this, because if it goes completely off the rails, We haven't had a chance to do this yet, really, but like if it goes completely off the rails, in the GitHub app, you can do this in the command line as well if you know how to do it, but you can basically like click up here at the changed files, right click it and say discard all changes, and it'll undo all of these changes. It'll revert you back to the most recent state that you committed, and then you can kind of go from there. No harm, no foul, and try it again. Giving it a different instruction, give it exactly the same instruction, but tell it not to do the thing that caused everything to screw up, that sort of thing. So it is taking a while to do this request. Again, like I said, this is a big one. Error editing file. I've seen that come up a couple times. I don't know what the deal is there. Yeah, strange. So, okay, so I think it's getting there. I think it's implemented the views already, and now it's just making it so that they show up, disappear. It's updating the logic of the other views to kind of interact with these new views. So if we kind of go back to the project, we should see there's our model for tracking the podcasts. There's the services for audio, for the image, for the player state, for the podcast feed parser. These are all kind of services that'll function in different ways. And here's all the views that exist in the app. So, okay, it looks like it's done. So what are the odds this will just run? That's a pretty big change. And yeah, so there's definitely errors here. So our player state manager, I see 3 errors here. We're going to copy all of these. I get 4 errors. Is it 4 errors? 3 errors. Paste them in and see what happens. I need to add combine. Okay, yeah. There we go. So it didn't import a tool. Oops. It did not import a tool that it needed. Okay, so now we have a size issue. 2 new issues. Okay, so these are on, what is this? This is now plain view, so we're okay, so it's the drag that it doesn't like. So, okay, so it's using Y instead of height. Build succeeded. Will it work? Tap it.
Welcome to
a
podcast.
Look at
all
that.
About a host. Well, outside
We've
of
got a
company.
podcast playing. Okay, and swipe down. That doesn't work. Does it swipe there? Okay, that's kind of a weird interaction. This UI is strange. It shows below the menu. Maybe the menu isn't the right way to do this. It did a pretty good job with the mini player, right? Like the artwork is there. Episode title, podcast title, progress bar, and then I can play, pause, I can skip, right?
Allow these apps.
I can
or you can
bring it back up. We're 4 minutes in. That's good. You've got a picker here for playback speed. This is pretty good. I mean, this is not there yet. This is not 100%, but this is not bad. This is not a bad place to be right from here, right? So pretty happy with this. You can see it actually has updated this view to show the progress bar and then your current timestamp. Does this update every second? It does update in real time. It shows the full time remaining. Nice. So that works. That's pretty good. What happens if we do connected? It did not change the artwork in the mini player. It did change it in the main
From
player.
Relay, this is connected, episode
if we
568.
scroll down here, okay, so the mini player doesn't update immediately. That's a bug to fix.
I am your Ricky Bench
we are approaching the hour mark. It's my pleasure to be joined for this big making episode. Progress. So this is pretty good. That animation is funky. I want to fix that. This is the position of this mini player is insane. This is kind of one of those things where I need to figure out what I want to do. I kind of like I have 2 things competing for kind of the bottom position. The menu wants to be at the bottom, but also the mini player wants to be at the bottom. Okay, let's try something interesting. So that actually got a lot working. So we're gonna got audio playback working in basic form. We'll commit that. Let's see if we can fix this UI as our kind of our last thing. This is working great, but the mini player is positioning itself oddly in the app. It's currently below the menu, which just is a weird interaction. can we make it so the mini player is kind of a hovering element that sits above the menu? It should behave the same and look pretty much the same, but give it rounded corners, make it more of a pill, and again, have it hovering on top of the UI above the main menu. So this is trickier. I don't know how this is going to work at all. Let's see. So with a pill-like design for better positioning, let me update the player overlay. And I don't know if if I switch, yeah, so it is on every view, but yeah, it's just, it's weird down there. I don't think it would be weird necessarily. I could push it further down to the bottom if I wanted. I think it's respecting the safe zone potentially. I could get rid of that. Make it a little taller, potentially make this maybe a little narrower so we can maybe get a back button there as well. Or maybe it's just fine to have the skip button. I don't know. But yeah, let's see what it spits out here because I think we can do better. I think it's also going to forget state. It would be nice if it remembered the state of the... Oh, yeah, I'm now realizing it's going to start every episode
Welcome
over.
to Comfort Zone.
Yeah, so another element we need is on each episode we need to know where we are in the playback. But first, we've tried to change the UI, so let's see if this worked. No errors. It built successfully. That's good. And what do we think is going to happen?
Welcome to Comfort
I mean,
Zone,
okay.
a podcast all about pushing a host. Well,
It's not
outside of their comfort
quite
zone.
right.
I'm Christopher Lawley, and each week I am joined by two
but it's
incredible
not
co-hosts.
horrible.
As
Okay.
always, I'm joined by Matt Birch.
This is
Matt,
looking
how
pretty
you doing?
good, but there's too much
Chris, I'm
space
feeling
between
silly
the mini player and the menu.
Ooh,
Can we
I
move
like
the
it.
mini player down a
Comfort
few
Zone is at its
pixels?
best when we're silly.
Yes.
And we're also joined
Okay, so
by
I'm going to try to do
Neon. How you
that
doing?
to move the mini player
I'm doing
down a
well.
little
Hello,
bit.
daddies. Can I call you daddies?
That will help.
Let's
I don't
not-
like
So
that.
it's
no,
reducing
I
my
don't like
padding,
that.
so
No,
paying
don't like that at all.
190. Okay, so
I
that's
don't see
actually
why. Okay, I'm
the
doing
dads
well.
are fine,
Yeah.
but not the other thing.
position
Yeah.
above the tab bar.
That's
Let's
strange.
actually
Okay.
find this in the project. Where is this?
We're strange.
Services
I'm doing
player.
well.
document.
I had planned
Services, play
a
state
prank for Chris.
manager.
Chris is weirded out
Okay,
by
let's actually make
people
this
who
like
hold mics in their hand.
30. Right.
And
Run that. It was 100. Let's cut it down by like a third. Let's get it closer. So we'll hit play. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay, so we'll do 80 maybe. Run it again. So that's potentially, we're kind of hard coding it from the bottom. Okay, so 80 is not it. Let's do 60. We're just going to kind of keep tweaking it until we get the right amount. Okay, that's pretty decent. So we'll say that's decent for the spacing. Okay, so that's where the mini player goes. Shows great. And what's the last thing we can do? Let's save state. Okay, last thing. Actually, let me commit this. Improved mini player layout. I want to remember where the user left off listening to an episode. So when they stop listening mid-episode or when they switch to another show or close the app or whatever, we should know where they were in that specific episode so that when they open that episode again, they pick up where they left off. Okay, so now we should add a state to the podcast episodes themselves. We might actually have to make some more changes. I'm not sure. Are we actually... I think this is only showing the... Yeah, we're only storing... I think it's going to add a new model, potentially. What's it doing here? Audio manager, time observer, so updates every second and saves progress. Cool. Okay, save it every 5 seconds. That makes some sense. Resume from save position if possible. And save playback position is in the audio manager. Okay. I actually think if I did this again, what I'd probably do is I'd have items. I'd add to the model. I'd have like podcasts as an item, and then episodes as their own individual things that are kind of associated with specific podcasts. That would probably be better than what we're doing now, but we're getting there. but you're kind of seeing we're an hour in. We're about to hit the 1 hour mark. I'm going to kind of stop this video where we're at. But you can kind of see how this goes. There's lots of little things to consider, lots of little decisions, user experience things, just a lot of stuff that we've got going on. And you got to think about it. You have to kind of understand how this works and which product you want to deliver. And you really have to think about it and kind of just push it little by little towards a better experience. So we're going to start the episode. It's going to play.
Welcome to.
We're going to skip ahead
Thing
to
I would
about
like. If this is a piece of
1933.
information I will
You
need
can kind of
or
see
an
it
idea or
logging
something,
and
I
saving
will
things.
write it.
So 1939 is where we're at now. If we start playing, you can see it's updated the UI there. You can see, move this over here to like
That is so
5247. There is
So
some
either
lag
1, 4,
because
6,
it's doing that
7,
too
or
often.
8.
If I go back here, it should pick up around 19 minutes in.
and I
It
write
does.
down all-
So, okay, so we have added state to these episodes, but there's so much more work to do. I need to add the ability to archive these episodes. I need to clean up the UI. We're just using kind of the default Swift UI element. The closest we got to a custom thing was this now playing bar. There's so much to do still in this app. And it's cool that this is functioning, but is it better than Overcast or Pocket Cast or Castro or Apple Podcasts? No, it's not even close. And so there's so much to do here. And it kind of shows, I wanted to do this demo to kind of give you an idea for how to work with these tools, because like, look at how far we got in 1 hour. Like, we can subscribe to shows, we can listen to episodes, we have a mini player, we have a now playing screen, we have playback speeds, right? There's so much that we've already done in just 1 hour of work, which is crazy. And I haven't written any of this code myself. I guess I changed the padding manually, but like everything else, I just worked through Claude Code. And so, again, I wanted to do this demo to give you kind of just level set what is possible, and also show how complex app development still is. There's still tons to do, tons to consider. We're not even close to having a shippable app, but we've been working for an hour. Of course we don't. No one would have a shipping podcast app in 1 hour of work, but it would take weeks, months probably of development, of testing, of user testing to get an idea for kind of how good this app is and what needs to change, what edge cases are we dealing with? We only even looked at 2 feeds. It's possible I could find a 3rd feed, paste it in, and suddenly there's new issues, right? We have this issue with the timing. Why does the relay feed show time, the episode duration like this, whereas Libsyn shows it in a way that makes more sense to me? I should probably show, instead of 1940, I should show the remaining time, right? Like, there's a billion things left to think about in this app. We didn't really get into the settings. There's a lot to be done here, but hopefully this gave you some ideas for how to talk to these tools, what tools to use. Again, I am a big proponent of Claude Code because I think it does a really good job of, it has great tooling to get you to a place where it will actually make decent code for you. And kind of, you saw how I talked with it, just little changes here and there, a couple big ones that it did a pretty good job of handling, but like, the more ambiguity you give it, the more it's going to go off and do its own thing. And the more you understand what's possible and what you want, the better you're going to be able to communicate with these tools and get them to do what you actually want. So am I happy that I was able to get this much done in an hour? Yeah, I kind of am. Like, I'm pretty impressed that I was able to get this much done, but this app is nowhere close to shipping. It would take, I can already tell you, it would take months of work, working on this, iterating on this, maybe even starting over kind of with what I've learned and like kind of getting the data model in place better, improving some of the logic with how we're like parsing information, how we're handling information, lots of stuff to do. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful if you're kind of curious about vibe coding or kind of want to understand where it's at. Again, I'm not a professional developer, but I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.